my name is Siena, and I'm a grade 12 student here at StansteadCollege. So as I am approaching the end of my high school career, I find myself looking back and reflecting on my education experience from as early on as kindergarten. Now, I must be honest to say that I very much enjoyed the elementary school experience. In fact, I think I can say that I enjoyed kindergarten to grade 5 the most, but let me tell you why. We had long recess breaks, story time, nap time, colorful classrooms, art class, music class, hands-on learning activities, and field trips. It was amazing because learning was actually a fun experience. Now, as I slowly began to move up grades each year, I started to notice that the colors in the classroom disappeared, the furniture became stiffer, and that there were fewer creative ways of being able to learn. Learning inside of a classroom started to feel robotic, and for so many years, I asked myself the question of why. Now, before I go down this topic any further, I would like to give some basic information of myself as a student. First off, I'm a visual learner. I much rather prefer to see things in front of me in order to get a better understanding of them. So if you're a visual learner, I'm very sorry that I do not have slides today. That is my bad. Another thing about me is I tend to learn more with my right hemisphere than my left, essentially meaning the creative side of my brain as opposed to the analytical, logical side of my brain. Another thing about me is when I was in grade 2, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and at the time I was at an all-girls school in Montreal, and I was the only girl in my grade that had some type of learning challenge, which definitely made me feel different and confused. I then began struggling with subjects such as math and science, while it felt like all of my other classmates were trotting along perfectly fine. And I remember feeling like I had to try so hard to catch up and fit into the mold of being this perfect student that society made me believe I needed to be. But don't worry, because what I finally realized is that everyone learns differently. And what I want to share with you all today is how I believe that we can change day-to-day learning in classrooms by making them more creative and personalized for different types of learners. Now listen. Students should not have to modify their ways of learning to fit the needs of a classroom, but I believe that a classroom should accommodate the needs of different types of learners. So it truly all begins inside of a classroom. The idea of a classroom was created over 150 years ago, and I think it is safe to say that a lot has changed since then. In today's world, we also have technology that gives us the answers to our infinite questions beyond the classroom walls. Beyond the classroom walls. However, I believe that a classroom should be more than just a room where students go to sit at a desk and take notes. Oftentimes, I remember where I walk into a class feeling unmotivated and tired when I come and sit at my desk, and I look around at my classmates who are equally as unmotivated to notice that I'm the only one who's watching the teacher. Walking into a classroom, students should feel inspired and motivated for what they're about to learn, which is why I think creativity needs to play a role in classrooms. So creativity forces a person to think outside of the box. Creativity forces a person to view something from a different perspective, which is why I think it is super important for the classroom. So now you might be wondering, well, Siena, what does it consist to make a classroom more of a creative environment? Well, let me share with you some ideas. Naturally, as humans, we are more attracted to bright, colorful things, which is why I believe that classrooms should be filled with a variety of colors. And I can tell you now that my fondest memories come from the classrooms that were the brightest and most colorful. Another thing I believe is that teachers should provide inspirational quotes and goal trackers for students throughout the year, as we often ask ourselves, what is the point of all this learning? Having these methods will remind students of where all of their hard work is going and sustain positive mental health. Having real people and mentors coming into classrooms to share their stories and journeys on where they are now with their careers is also another way that students will gain a different type of learning in a more creative way and in a way that they can relate to different types of people. Lastly, having learning outside of the classroom environment and hands-on activities will make a student learn 10 times faster and have more of an impact rather than taking notes inside of a classroom. Now, in terms of modifying the classroom itself to accommodate the needs of different types of learners, need to consist of getting rid of the 150-year-old classroom plan of desks and chairs. And don't get me wrong, having desks and chairs are very important, but who said that we need stiff, non-moving, uncomfortable chairs? I can remember at my old school in Montreal, a new feature was added where they had brought in chairs, movable chairs, in subjects such as science and math. And at first I was confused. I didn't really understand why this was brought in, but then as a student being able to experience sitting in these chairs for these subjects, I then realized that it is easier to stay focused on a subject while being able to move some part of your body while you focus. Another thing on the topic of chairs is whoever said that we needed to sit down at a desk rather than stand. And it might sound crazy, but you can actually learn at a desk while standing. And having this option of learning will make it a bigger impact than I think a person might think when it comes to learning at a desk. It's the small things like this that I believe will make a really big impact on a student and give them the options of how they learn. Lastly, the world is constantly being changed with new things every single day, and as our society continues to accommodate those changes, I believe so should our education system. Students today do not learn the same way that students did 150 years ago, and that is a fact. Being able to sit in a chair perfectly still for 6 periods a day is no longer realistic, and that is why I think it is time to change. It is time to change our classrooms and make them more creative, and students coming into high school should not be taught that creativity is something that gets pushed aside, but is something that should be embraced to strengthen their minds throughout the years. So let's change our classrooms to make them more creative and not only accommodate one student, but all types of students. If I could go back in time and tell my younger self that she's not crazy for being a different type of learner, I very much wish that I could do that. So let's change our classrooms and teach kids that being different and creative is okay, and help them achieve their goals of making the world a better place. Thank you.